I guess I should add that whilst we may not draw attention to a specific theme from the platform, we do value all of this discussion, and we do encourage you to participate. You'll see there's lots of opportunities, not just on Twitter, but we've got some interactive whiteboards upstairs for you to converse on, and lots of other opportunities. So please, work with us. So colleagues, I believe the Minister will leave us shortly to return to the House. But again, I'd just like to thank all at the DCSF for facilitating this conversation. So, we move to our first keynote. We're delighted to welcome Angela McFARLANE to open our conference presentations today. Many of you will be familiar with both the name and the work of Angela. As Professor in Education at the University of Bristol and Director of Content and Learning at the Royal Botanical Gardens in Kew, Angela joins us today to challenge the myth of the digital native. Conference, I ask you to join me in giving a warm NAACE welcome to Angela McFARLANE. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me today. I do feel genuinely honoured to be here opening the 25th NAACE conference. I'm one of that happy crew who was originally introduced to what digital technologies can do for teaching and learning by Bill Tagg when I was a trainee teacher. So this whole community has always had a very special place in my heart as well as in my professional life. And I was musing about Bill this morning, and many of you, I suspect, actually may not even remember Bill because you've not been around quite as long as I have. But I remember he always used to greet me when I was lucky enough to work with him on a number of projects, and he always used to say to me, "Hello, Angela, what are you angry about today?" And I was thinking about that. So today I wanted to talk to you, not necessarily be angry, but I do want to be a little bit challenging about this concept of the digital native. And of course, you all know the phrase. It gets bandied around a lot, particularly by what I like to call the techno-romantics amongst us. And it's behind a view of young people and their use of technology, which, whilst quite powerful, I think is also quite a barrier to real and meaningful uptake of technologies, both socially and to support learning. And so I want to explore that myth a little bit today, and I want to offer you some of the evidence that we've got that suggests that if we are to assume that young people have a natural aptitude for and desire to use technologies, we actually risk seriously further disadvantaging a particular group of learners who are already struggling to succeed in the education system. And of course, that's not what any of us would choose to do. So I just want to start off with sharing a few things which I think are fairly commonly held ideas and views, just to make sure we're all on the same page and you know where I am on these things. We're living supposedly in the information age, which according to the Smithsonian Institute, by the way, started at the end of the 19th century when Morse invented his system for transmitting messages over a distance. But clearly, as the Minister has pointed out, the ways in which we are using technology to communicate with one another are growing ever more rapidly, it seems, and being adopted ever more rapidly, and practices are changing so fast that it's almost breathtaking. And not only are our social practices changing, but of course our commercial practices are changing. And that means that people who are not able to adopt and exploit these technologies in both their social and their economic lives risk being seriously disadvantaged. So what are the implications of this for education? I actually feel I've got a very easy slot this morning following the tweet asking the Minister to articulate the consequences of personalised learning for pedagogy. I thought that was pretty tricky, never mind through Twitter. Perhaps asking a technology to go a step further than it was really capable of doing. But there are a number of models of what pedagogy for a knowledge age might look like. This is one that I and my colleagues are using quite a bit to inform our research these days. And it has a lot in common with a number of other particular models, but I like this one because I think it's quite explicit, and it spells out a few particular issues that I think are very important when it comes to thinking about the things we can use technology to facilitate in the context of teaching and learning. And I'm obviously not going to read these out, but a few of the things that I think are quite interesting is that if you look at the documents that people tend to produce to launch new initiatives around the use of technology in schools, many of the things that you'll see in this second column, highlighted in blue here, are there as aspirations amongst those projects, particularly things like greater learner autonomy, activities determined by learners, pace determined by learners, working in teams, a productive learning model, more student direction, more diagnostic assessment. These are always there as aspirations, but rarely are they there as outcomes of interventions. And I think we do have to ask some questions about just why these changes in pedagogy are not happening as a result of implementation projects that usually have those objectives at their heart. And there are a number of reasons why I think those pedagogies are not being adopted. The one that, of course, is always singled out for special mention is our assessment model that we tend to use, our high-stakes assessment model. But I think we may find as that model relaxes, we won't automatically see these changes in pedagogy coming through. And I think there are a number of reasons why that's likely not to be the case, and I will be touching on some of those this morning. I'm going to be drawing on this morning primarily on experience from two research projects that I've been involved with over the last 4 years now. One is a Bechter-funded project where we're now following children for their third year of education in a context where they have had personal ownership of an interconnected, connected device 24/7. So we've gone well beyond the implementation hiccups with these children, and they've had these devices long enough now for their practices to be fairly embedded. And we've been working very closely with schools in Bristol and in Wolverhampton, and of course we couldn't have done any of this work without the help of those schools and without the help of the local authority and the CLC who are supporting those projects. And in fact, if you want to hear more about the Bristol project, they will be talking about that tomorrow. The other project that's informing this is a 15-month study funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council with the BBC, looking at learning in online creative communities, in particular around the BLAST community. So we're drawing from two very different sources here, but finding some very similar themes. And I think that gives me a greater confidence that these things that we're seeing are both real and generalisable, and therefore worth sharing with you today. We're seeing three things emerging quite strongly in terms of the potential of the digital technologies to support learning. One is around the interaction, both of people with technologies and people with people. The second is around the use of technologies to support productive learning, by which I mean learning tasks wherein young people are producing content. They are not simply consuming content produced by other people, but their own production of content is at the heart of the process. And of course, one of the things that digital technologies allow you to do is not only to produce content often in greater volume and more quickly than you might do with non-digital media, they also offer opportunities for iteration. You get feedback from people, and then you go on and you develop the work that you're doing. We are beginning to see some of the fruits of that particular process coming through in a few cases, but I have to say that for me is one of the major barriers to really getting the most out of these technologies. We do not have, in most of the schools that we're working with, a model of curriculum that allows an extended period of time on a single topic, which allows for cycles of iteration. What's tending to happen is that children do a piece of work, and whether or not they've actually finished that piece of work, they move on to the next piece of work, and they may or may not get meaningful feedback on that work, either from their teachers or from anybody else, before they move on to the next thing. And that, for me, is one of the major barriers that is stopping both the teachers and the children really getting the key benefits out of the power of the technology to both support production of content, but also, of course, to support meaningful formative assessment, which, as we know, is a terribly powerful pedagogic tool for enhancing learning.